Picture two men in an alley. One of them wants the other to put on a pair of sunglasses, and that is the entire disagreement. Just try them on, just for a second. The other man refuses, so they fight. Not a quick scuffle, but a full 5.5-minute brawl with punches, headlocks, and both of them bleeding by the time it finally stops. That scene has been parodied 100 times, and most people who remember it file it away as a joke. Two stubborn guys beating each other senseless over nothing. South Park did a version of it. People still quote it at parties. What most of them miss is that the fight is not a joke at all. That alley is the whole film compressed into 6 minutes. John Carpenter wrote They Live, directed it, and scored it himself, releasing it in 1988 as what looked on the surface like an alien invasion action movie. There are sunglasses, there are aliens, there is Roddy Piper, a professional wrestler making his first film, delivering one of the most quoted lines in science fiction history. All of that is real. None of it is the point. What nobody expected in 1988, and what keeps pulling people back to this film, is that it has only grown more uncomfortable with time. Not because it is bleak, though it is, and not because it is angry, though it is that as well. The discomfort comes from something else entirely. It keeps being right. The scene the whole film builds toward arrives quietly, about 30 minutes in. Nada, played by Piper, has found a pair of sunglasses hidden inside a box inside a church wall, and he carries them out into Los Angeles and puts them on. The film shifts. Color drains out of everything. The billboards that had been advertising banks and perfume now carry different messages: OBE, consume, submit, marry and reproduce. No independent thought, printed in plain white letters on black backgrounds, no attempt at disguise, because none was needed. Some of the people walking the street no longer look like people. Underneath the surface Nada had always accepted as real, there is something skeletal and alien, staring back at him with the calm of something that has never needed to hide. He takes the glasses off. Los Angeles snaps back into color. He puts them on again, and the commands return. Off, on, off, on. The world he knew and the world underneath it, both equally real, one layered over the other. Carpenter shot all of that on location in genuine Los Angeles streets. Those messages were not painted on a set, they were printed on full-scale props, and placed against real storefronts, real magazine racks, real bus shelters, and the production crew paid local gangs to stay clear while they filmed. The whole sequence came from a short story Ray Nelson published in 1963, but Carpenter took it somewhere Nelson had not gone, as a direct attack on Reagan's America, on the normalization of advertising as environment, on consumption as identity, on the steady drone of a culture telling everyone they were fine and to keep moving. To feel what Carpenter was reacting to, you need a clear picture of what 1988 actually looked like from the outside. The economy was growing, the stock market had recovered from its 1987 crash, and the message coming from every direction was that things were working, that the system was healthy, that the American dream stood available to anyone willing to reach for it, not just available but obligatory, a test of character you were expected to pass. Everyone was supposed to be ascending. At the same time, visible homelessness in American cities had more than doubled since the start of that decade. The shantytown Nada calls home at the start of the film was not built on a studio lot. Carpenter brought real homeless people in as extras, paid them actual wages, fed them on set, and cast them as themselves. Roddy Piper did not have to stretch far for those scenes, because he had been homeless as a teenager before professional wrestling pulled him out of it. Nada is Spanish for nothing. That is the character's name, and the film never explains it, never draws attention to it, just lets it sit there. A man with no name that means anything, invisible to the economy no matter how hard he works, until the morning he picks up a pair of glasses and finally sees what that economy actually is. What sets They Live apart from most political science fiction is something it gets exactly right and rarely gets credit for. The most durable form of control never announces itself as control. The aliens running Los Angeles are not operating labor camps or threatening anyone. Over years they have woven themselves so completely into the financial and media establishment that their occupation became invisible. They own the banks, they run the television stations, they promote the humans who cooperate and quietly remove the ones who push back. No violence required. No visible authority, just incentives, pointing in the same direction, every day. Late in the film a human character turns up who has been collaborating with them for years. His explanation for it is calm and without apology. The world already worked this way before the aliens arrived, he says, and they simply made it legible. He has a comfortable apartment, he is not portrayed as a monster, and that is a deliberate choice, because the film is not interested in letting the audience feel superior to him. He made a rational calculation and it paid off. And the film looks him in the eye without flinching. That is what Carpenter was watching in Reagan's America, not a conspiracy with a villain at the center of it, but a set of incentives that nobody needed to enforce because following them was simply easier than not following them, no orders required. The rewards spoke clearly enough on their own. Worth noting too, Carpenter wrote the screenplay under the name Frank Armitage, a pseudonym he used when he did not want his name appearing in multiple credits on the same film. The intellectual hero inside the film is also named Frank Armitage. The author hid inside his own work and gave his alias the role of the man who saw through the surface first. Most political films make the same mistake. They hand you a villain so clearly rotten that refusing to act against him feels cowardly. They Live does something harder and more interesting. It makes the comfortable position completely understandable. Frank, played by Keith David, refuses to put the glasses on. He has heard the warnings. He has seen enough to know something is off, and he has made a conscious choice to stop there, because going further would mean he could not come back. He has a job, a place to sleep, a routine that holds together as long as he does not look too closely at the seams. Asking him to put on those glasses is asking him to blow all of that up. And he knows it. The alley fight reads differently once you understand that. Nada is not fighting a stupid man. He is fighting a man who understands the cost of knowing perfectly well, and has decided the cost is too high. That is a genuine position, not a weak one, and the film never frames Frank as someone to look down on. When Frank does finally put the glasses on, his face carries no horror, no shock, and no disbelief. What crosses his face is recognition, the expression of a man confirming something he had felt in his bones for years, who now has a name for it. All the low-grade wrongness he had filed away and learned to ignore snaps into focus in a single moment. And the look on his face is not fear. It is the exhausted relief of finally knowing for certain. The thing 1988 could not have predicted was that the billboard would become the feed. Back then, the architecture of persuasion existed outside you. Billboards stood on streets you could leave. Magazines sat on racks you could walk past. Television ran in rooms you could exit. The infrastructure of influence occupied physical space, and physical space had edges you could reach. Walking away was an option. Now that architecture lives inside your pocket and follows you everywhere, tracking what you looked at for 3 seconds before scrolling past, filing that away, and using it to construct messages built specifically for you, updated in real time, calibrated to produce a response so precisely tuned that you often do not notice you have already responded. They Live writes its commands in white block letters on black backgrounds. OBE, consume, no independent thought, because the 1988 version of this idea needed to be that blunt to land. The version that replaced it is subtler. It shows you something you already want, at the exact moment your resistance is lowest, and calls the process personalization. Carpenter recalled starting to watch television again, and noticing with fresh eyes that everything on screen existed to sell something. He was describing 3 networks, scheduled programming, a system that seems almost quaint by comparison. He had no idea what kind of machine was being assembled downstream. And here is what the glasses actually do in the film. They do not reveal anything new. They reveal what was always there, underneath the surface designed to be looked at comfortably. The surface was built for engagement, built to keep you watching without friction. Strip it back and the raw command is sitting there exactly where it always was. That is now a professional discipline. Entire teams spend their working hours studying which image stops the scroll, which phrasing triggers a share, which notification pulls a user back into the app at the right moment. None of them think of themselves as running a planetary control operation. They are shipping products and hitting quarterly targets, and the effect is indistinguishable from the film. The aliens in They Live are not frightening because they are cruel. They are frightening because they are completely at ease. They built a world that suits them. They cannot imagine why anyone would want to dismantle it. And progress by their own accounting is clearly happening. The numbers are good. Anyone unhappy about the arrangement simply is not working hard enough. That joke lands differently now than it did in 1988, which is the best and worst thing you can say about it. Before getting to the film's argument, it is worth spending a moment on the man at the center of it. Roddy Piper came to They Live as a professional wrestler, specifically a heel, which in wrestling means the villain, the crowd baiter, the man whose job is to be despised, known as much for his mouth as for his physicality. Carpenter spotted him in WrestleMania 3, recognized the right kind of physical presence, and wrote the role of Nada for him directly. By any reasonable expectation, the performance should not work. What Piper brings to the character instead of conventional acting technique is something a trained actor might have spent years training himself out of, a bone-deep working-class exhaustion, the specific body language of a man who has been dismissed repeatedly and has stopped expecting to be taken seriously. He moves through spaces that were not designed for him, and he does it without complaint because that is simply how the world has always been arranged. When Nada puts the glasses on and the full reality of what he has been living inside snaps into focus, his response is 2 words: it figures. Not shock, not outrage, not fear. Just, it figures. That is the performance in a single breath. A man who has just received confirmation of something he already understood in his body without being able to name it. Vince McMahon, who ran the WWF at the time, actively blocked Piper from taking the role, offering him a different project at the same pay rate, rather than lose him for the shoot. Piper turned down the substitute and walked away from the organization entirely to make the film. When he came back to wrestling, the exposure from They Live had made him more popular than before, and he credited the film directly for that. There is one more detail worth catching on a rewatch. Piper refused to remove his wedding ring for filming. Nada is supposed to be a man with nothing tying him anywhere, and yet in several shots you can clearly spot the ring on his finger. Carpenter saw it and left it in. A drifter with nothing to his name, still wearing proof that somewhere in the world someone is his. The most famous line in the film was not written by Carpenter either. Piper carried it in a notebook of potential one-liners he had been building throughout his wrestling career, verbal ammunition for the right moment, and he showed the notebook to Carpenter during prep. Carpenter recognized it immediately for what it was, a line that sounds spontaneous because it was, just not in front of a camera. It was improvised by a man who had spent years in front of crowds, saving his best material for a moment that could hold it. One of the odder qualities of They Live is how long it sits still before moving. For the first 40 minutes of a film nominally about alien invasion, almost nothing alien happens. Nada arrives in Los Angeles, picks up construction work, makes a wary friend, sleeps in a homeless camp, eats at a soup kitchen, and watches television. The film is in absolutely no hurry and makes no apologies for it. A faster, more commercial version of the same story would have had the sunglasses on within 10 minutes. Aliens revealed, mission established, action sequence. That version would have been entertaining, and would have vanished from memory within a week. Carpenter chose something harder. He made you understand exactly what kind of tired Nada carries before a single alien appears, so that when the glasses go on and the world inverts, you experience it through his body rather than through a plot mechanism. And that slowness pays off in a specific scene that the film uses to tell you exactly what it is doing. Nada watches a hijacked TV broadcast where a scientist explains, in plain language, that the population has been conditioned without its knowledge and that the only way to break the signal is to destroy its source. The other people in the room rub their temples and change the channel. Some people receive the signal, most people develop a headache and look away. The pacing before the glasses is not a flaw in the film. It is the proof of concept, the demonstration of exactly how comfortable the before state is, how naturally a person moves through a world that has been designed to be moved through without friction. By the time the glasses arrive, the comfort feels earned and real, which is the only way the discomfort of what comes after can land properly. And that is also why the alley fight takes 6 minutes. Nada spends nearly 30 minutes alone with the truth before he can convince a single person to look at it with him. The glasses are not the obstacle. Wanting to put them on is. 1 year after They Live opened, a student at the Rhode Island School of Design started papering walls with stickers. The stickers carried the face of the wrestler Andre the Giant and a single word underneath, OB. By the mid-1990s they had spread across cities in the United States and beyond. The artist was Shepard Fairey, and he has never been ambiguous about where the word came from. They Live was the source, specifically the film's image of a city where every surface carried an instruction, and the word that appeared on more of those surfaces than any other. Fairey took that one word from one billboard and spent the next 30 years watching people argue about what it meant to them, which was more or less the point. That campaign grew into a clothing line, a global street art movement, and eventually the visual language behind the Barack Obama Hope poster in 2008, a path that runs from a John Carpenter B-movie dismissed by critics as clumsy and preachy, through sticker campaigns on lampposts and bus shelters, all the way to one of the most reproduced political images of the 21st century. The ideas got into the walls and stayed there. The ending of They Live is easy to misremember as a victory. The signal gets disrupted and the glasses become unnecessary. But what the final moment of the film actually does is leave a question hanging in the air without attempting to answer it. Once you have seen what is underneath, what do you do with that? Carpenter never made a sequel. He moved on to other work, and for years They Live occupied an awkward middle position in his filmography. Not quite celebrated the way Halloween or The Thing were, not forgotten either, just sitting there. Critics in 1988 called it too blunt, too simple, too angry. The New York Times said the film was flat. The Washington Post called it preposterous. All that time the OBE stickers were going up on walls. The film ran on late-night television and people who caught it by accident stayed with it longer than they expected to. Whole generations rented it on video and came away feeling something they could not quite articulate. Not about the plot, but about the feeling underneath the plot, the specific fatigue of inhabiting a world that keeps generating new desires and never once asks whether you signed up for the arrangement. The film does not ask you to do anything. It is 94 minutes long and has no call to action. It is just a pair of glasses, sitting on a table. Put them on or leave them there. Either way, the billboards are still running. They Live is streaming on multiple platforms tonight. The hour and a half it asks for is all it needs. put it on after dinner, on a proper screen if you can manage it, with someone who has never seen it, and watch their face during the billboard walk. For those of you who have already seen it, I want to leave you with a question for the comments. When did this film stop feeling like science fiction to you? For a lot of people it happened in a specific year. I am curious which one it was.